everybody. Welcome to another beautiful episode of Change for the Health of It. I'm Lee. I'm an ACE-certified health coach who helps you heal your relationship with food and movement. We've got Kelly.
I am also a health coach. I focus on healing your skin and hair conditions through dealing with emotional health and gut health.
And we've got a special guest today, Daryl. Take it away, Daryl.
And I am also a fitness professional, certified personal trainer, habit-based nutrition coach. Biggest thing for me, though, is I come at health and fitness from my other background, which is in marketing, both agency and corporate. And I don't like how the fitness and beauty industries market against our insecurities. So the entire premise of everything I do is go after all the things that you want, but you're good enough as you are right now. Do all the things, but realize that's not going to give you the kind of sustained happiness that you're looking for. So happy to be here, though.
We're happy to have you. We're really excited. And I think, just from your first reflection there, a reason we were so excited to have you on the podcast is because of your holistic approach and because you realize there is no health without mental health. That's just not a thing that is possible. And so kind of getting started here, when we're talking about health journeys, why do you guys think mental health is something that needs to come up more often in that conversation?
We live in a world through distractions. I think the distractions we all think of right away is our phones, but everything is so immediate. Everything is so just in your face that it's very easy if there's things in your life that you don't like or things about yourself that you don't like.
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with that. You can just ignore. But on the insides, the pit of your stomach and in the back of your mind, stuff just continues to build and build.
Absolutely. I think the idea that even if you're not aware, it's still something that you're paying the price for is something Kelly and I have touched on before, where you might feel like you're getting away with something, but eventually something comes to collect from you and something says hey, by the way, that thing you've been numbing for the last 6 months, that didn't work. So I think that's a really poignant point. What about you, Kel?
Yeah, I was just going to say, something that we talk about a lot on our show is numbing. And I feel like social media and the phones are a great way to do that. And it's just such a distraction from not only the things that you can accomplish, but also those things that you need to reflect on personally that can help you get to your goals faster.
Yeah, I think when I hear the word numbing, what I think about is that often what we see in this profession is people using food as a means of comfort. And why you have to look at mental health in this instance is if you're using food for comfort, it usually means you're not offering yourself comfort in other ways. Instead, you're numbing. And so I think if you don't look at the mental aspects of this journey, you could think, oh, I'm just super obsessed with X food. And really believe that it's like a sugar addiction or like some, whatever new Finsta thing comes up with hashtag this thing. And then you're bought in that the problem is food, not the problem being a lack of joy or comfort in your own life.
Well, and I think another thing that we're all very quick to do is to assign a label to something, and if it's crazy with social media because it's gone from, people throughout our lives have attached labels. We've had people attach labels to us. We've taken these on ourselves, but because we live in this space that we're at, and a big thing with health professionals is, where is that line of scope of practice?
Yes.
And you have people almost talking as if that they have more qualifications than they do, and the reason they do it is because this is such a loud space, right? Not just the fitness industry, but social media in general. And I think that it's very tricky because we're all speaking from our own experiences. I mean, we're talking about things that would be tied into, but most people would look at as medical diagnosis. However, in the world we live in, when we're talking about, avoidance and numbing and you mentioned awareness, Lee, which I think is what everything comes back to. Like when you're aware of yourself, when you feel things within yourself, and that so much of this is us being in tune to who we are and actually forming relationships with not only other people, but starting with ourselves. Then we have the relationship with food that you're talking about, which is a byproduct, like an offshoot of the relationship we have with
Absolutely.
ourselves. It just like, I think we try to make this stuff very, I don't want to say that it's very complicated, because everybody's relationship is going to be a little bit different with all of these things. But I think we've almost assigned self diagnosis when it's something where like we feel like that's the type of problem. But really, all of this stuff, I think if we were able to dig down deep and connect with who we are, our relationship with food, our relationship with exercise, our social connections really are a reflection of how we view ourselves. And that, I think, is actually very empowering, because we have the power to actually change that.
Absolutely.
I agree. And I think that the other interesting thing about social media and trying to numb with social media is sometimes we actually make ourselves feel a lot worse because of all that noise that you were talking about, Daryl. If we go online like looking to get some support, and there are just so many things coming at you of you should be doing this, you should be doing that. You just feel overwhelmed and burnt out, and like we talked about in our last episode, possibly even being considered lazy because you're not doing all the things that all of these people are telling you to do, and each person has like their own variation of how to do it, and it just creates this feeling of overwhelm and heaviness, and it's just very easy to become anxious when you're looking to actually numb. So I just think that that's an interesting thing as well.
Yeah.
Well, you both kind of highlight how at the end of the day, it's not that there is some set group of perfect rules that if you just follow these 20 rules, your whole life changes and now you're perfectly happy, you're good to go. And when you think about programs, that's what you're being sold.
Well, I was just going to say, we'd all be out of business. If there was a perfect 20-step thing to fix you, I mean, none of us would be here.
Correct.
But I mean, that's also the beauty of our industry. And we all talk about individuality and, talking to each person as an individual, creating individual treatment plans. And I think that is the beauty of this. If we're flipping to that side, I'm not the same as you, Lee, and Lee, you're definitely not the same as Daryl. We're all separate people. We have things in common, but we're all not going to react the same to the same program.
Absolutely. And so when you look for someone to work with, thinking about, is this person looking at me as an individual, or is this person giving me the exact same plan they'd give Bob? The question there is, am I learning how to serve myself in the life I'm living now? Or am I trying to put arbitrary rules in place for what I've defined as success without getting to know myself at all, like Daryl mentions?
Yeah.
And when it's arbitrary rules that aren't connected to who you are, it's not sustainable. And I think in all of our different spaces and lanes, we've seen that then doesn't get our clients the results that they're hoping for. If it's not sustainable, it's not successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, and this is another thing, so social media is how the message is delivered right now, or most often. So everything is in absolutes, and it's exactly what
Yes.
you're talking about. It's this is the right way to do it. This is the wrong way to do it. And now it's funny, on the day that we're recording, and Lee, you might have already seen this. Like, I'm done playing in the I'm using social media to get people to sign up for my email. Like I want people to come over to my sandbox. And this is kind of the whole thing, because in order for me to get you to focus on yourself, because at the end of the day, like, the most important thing, if you're working with a fitness professional, and people don't necessarily, you're not going to know this by the amount of followers they have on Instagram. You're not going to know this by the certifications, and you're not even going to know this by what their aesthetic look is. Their relationship with this entire process, and if they've built it for longevity and they enjoy it, that's what's most important, because whoever you work with, their approach to this stuff is going to rub off on you. And
100%.
it's so nuanced, because you're absolutely right. Like we all, it's again, it gets back to that easy access consumption mindset that we're in. Tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Exactly.
This stuff, this stuff is so individualized, which is the best possible thing. However, when you get to be in your 30s and 40s, and if you've been a lifelong you know, program participant,
Right.
diet, or whatever you want to call yourself, for years or decades, you know, you're just used to being told what to do. But the crazy thing is it's really it's so individualized. What do you want to eat? Well, let's start with the types of foods that you like. How do you want to
Literally.
move? I mean, it's so basic, but it's counter to what we're told all the time. And you
It's
question yourself. You're like, is there an optimal way of doing this? No, it's all individualized.
Mhm.
100%. It's less of tell me what to do and more like tell me who you are and
Mm,
I can give you some options that might work for you.
yeah.
And it's, when we're in pain and we're looking to numb, sometimes the last thing we want to do is tell somebody who we are. Right? We're trying to avoid whatever has been causing us to not look at that. And so it is a big ask. And I think it's interesting because I'm guessing this plays out really differently for men and women, like in the space, the types of messages
Mhm.
you're receiving, and even like what to do or what to do it for. Like Kelly, what do you think in terms of like women? How are we presented with messages on Instagram? How does it connect to beauty and mental health to you?
So I think everything for women is really reflective back to, you have to be fit, you have to be pretty, you have to present yourself in a certain type of way. And that's always been the messaging, whether it's, the 1950s or it's now. Now there is a lot more body positivity, so we're moving in the right direction, but I still feel like a lot of it is you have to have like the perfect body. Why don't you want to be lean? Why don't you want to be fit? Why don't you want to be building muscle? It's always questioning what you want. Well, why don't you want to fit in? Why don't you want to be this? Why don't you want to be this? I could make you look like this.
You were saying like essentially within this field, there's this part that while they're saying one thing, that they mean another thing.
Yes.
Every time they're
Yes.
asking you a question,
Right.
it's
It's not
not that,
truly what we want. It's, why aren't you fitting into this cookie cutter?
right.
Yeah.
What do you think about in the male space, Daryl? Like, how do you see? I feel like Kelly focused a lot on like leanness and beauty as like tropes that are constantly kind of pushed down our throats. Like, in the male centered space, what do you see?
It's, you know, the crazy thing is, it's actually a lot of the same now. And,
Interesting.
and I think Kelly's right. Like it started back in the 50s and probably even before that with traditional media. With men, they didn't really start it until I remember. So I remember when I was in high school in the late 90s,
Mm.
seeing and it was two sides. It was, well, you've got to be, you have to have the broad shoulders. You have to be really muscular,
Mhm.
but at the same
Yeah.
time, you have to have the V shape, and you have to look
Yeah.
a certain way. And it's just interesting. So like it was the arms and abs have been the thing for guys, and then if you didn't have defined calves, then it was, well, why aren't
Oh
you?
yeah,
Are you
that's
skipping leg day?
Great
What's
chicken
going on?
legs.
Yeah, but the crazy thing is, so I always think of, the stuff. It's exactly what Kelly's saying, which is they try to fit you into a box. So you
Mm.
you want to have that lean athletic look, but now in 2024, you want to look like Jason Kelsey at the Super Bowl, taking his shirt off, drinking the beers, like be the manly man. He's known as the sexy man. Well, whereas for you guys, it's changed as well. Well, now we
Yeah.
want you to be strong. We want you, to be muscular. Whereas I always think of this old clip from America's Top Model. I want to say it was
oh
like
god.
2006, 2007, and they're saying that this woman is plus size, and she's maybe a size 6, maybe.
Mm.
So I mean, it's wild but it's exactly what Kelly's talking about. It's this box that they're trying to cram people in. It's crazy.
But I mean, also, kind of just to add what you said, I almost feel badly because there is so much focus on, the stereotypes of women and the beauty standards for women that I feel like we don't really talk about those standards for men. And in chatting with my partner, it was something that I became aware of this past year because he was competing for a show, and he would just like constantly scroll through Instagram and he'd be like, look at this guy, like, look at this guy. And it was just so interesting and eye opening that the things that we do as women, where we're going through and we're like, oh my gosh, look at her hair, look at her skin, like, look at her legs, men also do.
They do, and there's so there's a couple of, and it depends. Again, the algorithms are going to show what you have at least stopped on in the past. So
Yeah.
if you're a physique competitor, you're going to get these physique competitors that are show ready, and it's going to make it look like that's how they are, year round. Angles, filters, all that stuff, which I know you guys have to deal with as well. The other thing, for men, it's about the whatever your interest is, you're going to get a lot of that in your feed. So it could be bodybuilding, it could be or physique competitions, it could also be cars. If you're trying to be successful with work or start a business, you're going to see a lot of this entrepreneurship stuff. Basically, any kind of insecurity you could have, when they figure out what it is, you are going to see it over and over and over. And the thing is that you're going to, they try to train you to aspire to chase after whatever that is. Now, I kind of laugh because when we get into the mental health stuff, I had a thing during the pandemic where I essentially realized the life I had was not working for me, and I did blow everything up. Now, and it's tough because but we'll get into that. But the reason I say that is I started seeing a lot of the dating stuff on social media. Well, if you're not making this amount of money, and if you're this age, and the whole thing, like with guys being short. So the thing is, I love, like, I'm like the anomaly of everything. So I'm 5'7", I'm 42 years old, and I'm physically disabled, which you see in my content. You can't tell right now. So like I should have all these strikes against me. However, I have my long term girlfriend that I've been with for a couple of years, and like I did not have any problem getting things with her. But honestly, everything we're talking about, the way that I think men and women deal with this is you really pay attention to how much time you're scrolling. Like my social media behavior now, my explore page is all stuff that she and I will send back and forth to each other. So I have like
crack me up on Instagram. They're the cutest couple.
So this is actually a really good point. If we're like seeing things in our feed that are really making us feel bad, like it doesn't take long for you to just start searching out things that are more positive. And just like random things. I think this is why a lot of the nostalgia accounts take off. So you'll see like the elder millennial things, and you'll see, I mentioned the zoo animals. You'll see all the travel things. Like you can create your experience, because if if you're not interacting with the stuff that they're serving up to you, they want you on the app as often as possible. But then I think the ultimate solution is, really pay attention to what your screen time is. And are you using social media as a way to express, like share bits and pieces of your life? Or are you using this to live vicariously, which leads to a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, where you're feeling really bad about everything?
1,000%.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that you also just said too, that I think kind of applies to outside of social media, is crafting your own experience. You can do that in social media, but guess what? You can also do that in your own life. And I think that that's something that the three of us really focus on, is, working on your own habits to craft this life experience that makes you as happy and healthy as possible.
The word that both of you guys said while you were discussing this, which to me just like kind of brings it all home, is the word insecurity.
Yes.
I think, like, adding on to what both of you have said, you have to be aware of your own insecurities, because everything around you is watching to see. And if the algorithm knows what you're insecure about more than you do, you're going to be eating that stuff up. God, I am lazy. God, I don't try with my food. You know what? I'm not. And every single time you call yourself whatever name or say whatever thing, you're building your story that you believe. What you tell yourself every day is what you believe. It's what you're living. It's the truth that you're in. And so if every time you're going on this app, you're like, well, I do need to be skinnier and prettier like her. Well, I do. How will change happen? You know, I think it gets to the point where you're in a cycle at that point. Every day you're waking up, you're mad at yourself for the exact same thing. You feel pain about it. You reinforce that pain with the app, and you wake up and you do it and you go, why am I not feeling better? And so like those insecurities, they probably didn't just start a year ago. They probably started when you were a very small child who didn't know what was going on, and they grew with you to the adult you are now. And facing them is absolutely one of the scariest things that I've ever done in my adult life. And I would guarantee you guys feel similarly, that like really facing those insecurities head on and going, they're not controlling me anymore. It is like hard. I think it's also the thing that's going to help you see I don't have to change who I am. Actually loving myself and honoring what makes me feel insecure is going to allow me to feel much better than pretending there's nothing there at all.
So one thing, and I agree. It's funny, like, because I think of conversations that we've had on podcasts before, where it's like, what's the buzzword about insecurities or whatever? Where did it all start? Childhood, yay! But like,
It's
but I think as we're talking about insecurity, a really important thing to call out, and I'll say this for myself, and I think you guys, based on what you're saying, are going to agree. When we talk about calling the stuff out and identifying it and working through it, I like to put a number on it, like 85% of the time. If 85% of the time I'm feeling confident and comfortable with who I am,
oh yeah,
then that is a victory. And I know when, and again, when you start talking about mindset and development and all this, I think, again, because people are so used to absolute points of view, plus I also think, again, a lot of the stuff that you're going to see, like when people are recording podcasts and when people are doing content, they now want to come out as an authority, like as an authoritative figure. And part of that is like they have no weakness, which, again, anybody that's been through life knows that we all have insecurities, we all have weaknesses. But like, it's working through stuff is very, very important. You do have to figure out where it starts, and then it's a lifelong thing. But I think this gets back to something that you brought up again. You said awareness at the top of this, and like everything, I believe everything comes back to how we view ourselves and how well connected we are with ourselves.
100%.
And there's a lot of things we talk about. It starts earlier in life. What I found when I started working with a therapist and really started to have a good working relationship with her is we were uncovering things that in my mind, I completely had forgotten about or didn't even remember happening. And so I think that's one thing. Like, I know we're going to have a conversation about therapy. I think therapy is an amazing tool. It's a foundational tool if you can develop that working relationship.
Yeah.
That's not going to be the case for everybody with every single therapist. I had to switch out from the one that I started with, and I started on one of the online apps. But it's one of these things where they help you dive deep within yourself, and then you start working through things. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, therapy's good because everybody needs someone to talk to. Yes, but there's about 19 different layers below that that really talk about why therapy is truly important. So,
yeah, and go ahead.
I was just going to say we've all had experiences with therapy, so I think we've kind of tied in therapy might be an important part of the journey, and awareness is certainly important. So maybe we dig into what are some ways therapy taught us to be more aware? What practices have we learned where we've been able to incorporate awareness more because of something we gained from therapy?
I think one of my biggest takeaways with therapy was being able to sit with discomfort with yourself.
Mm.
You know, being able to sit with your emotions and process them out. And for me personally, one of my biggest takeaways was anger is the easiest emotion to feel. I had so many people tell me, when you get upset, you just get angry. And I do, I get angry. Angry is the easiest emotion to feel. But if I take what I've learned in therapy and I sit down and I go, okay, I'm angry. Why am I angry? And I journal it out. I know, Daryl, you talked about journaling in your last episode, and you journal it out. There's a lot more underneath that anger. It's probably hurt. It's probably fear. I can name a whole slew of emotions that it is, but it it is uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to sit there and go, well, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? And it does help you face those insecurities that you have about yourself. Is this actually a real situation, or is this something that I may be overreacting with because it's one of my insecurities? So I feel like being able to sit, process, and self-reflect was one of my biggest takeaways with therapy.
I think it's a huge one because, like, both of those things, right, are something that, like, I think you both would agree with is the things that we choose to practice don't just stay in that lane. They follow us into the other lanes of life. And this is something that my clients, like, continually, like, oh my God, the other day at work, I did this because we talked about, and it's like, yes, exactly. Like, awareness follows you wherever you are, there you are, and you get to be there and present and make your choices. And I think Kelly just summarized in such a powerful way, like allowing yourself to know your feelings and know why you're feeling them is such an important step in allowing yourself to process what's happening around you. What do you think, Daryl?
So I think one, I agree with all of that. I think that we have to be able to feel our feelings, and I think this is one. So this is one of the areas where there's a lot of things that we have been very quick again, either or. We're whether it's qualities, characteristics have been assigned to genders. One of the biggest
Yeah.
problems for men, because I do have a podcast that is just men talking about emotions, and it's interesting when you talk to men about how this was presented to them. We were not taught how to
Right.
even acknowledge that we had emotions, and that whole message of showing emotion is weakness. Being in tune with who you are and what you feel is actually a true sign of strength.
I didn't know that I truly was not taking care of myself. If you were not shown a model of how to take care or love yourself, and you grew up in an environment where survival was the focus, it then shouldn't be shocking to you that as an adult, you don't know what to do. And yet, for me, it took me well into my late 20s, into my 30s, after I'd been to therapy for years. It took a new therapist, kind of what Daryl was mentioning, to show me a different light, to offer me a new perspective. And I remember the pain and embarrassment I felt when I realized I have not even let myself wonder this. I have not even let myself question for a second why I believe it isn't important to take care of myself and every other person's needs should be met first. And that was causing organ failure. It's not like it was like, oh, and we're having a jolly good time. Like, it was killing me.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you are someone listening and you have found it really hard to, like, take the time to say, this is what I'm insecure with, or this is where I want to get started, and part of what's holding you back is you just feel like there are so many layers. The sooner you get started, the better you're going to feel. Like, there won't ever be a magic bullet, single pill version of healing, at least in my opinion.
Well, I think one of the things that you just said too also kind of spoke to emotional intelligence and developing emotional intelligence. But also, I think a lot of people find that their insecurities have become such a normal part of their life that they
Mm,
think that there really aren't necessarily insecurities there because it's something that they've grown up, similar to what you were just saying. You didn't realize that you should be taking care of yourself because you were never taught to take care of yourself, and that was a very normal thing. And I think it's interesting when you go to therapy or when you work with a coach and you have someone asking you these deeper questions of why don't you take time to decide, what your
yes.
favorite activities are or what your favorite foods are? Why is it that you can name your best friend's favorite food or your
Mm,
partner's favorite food, but you don't know what yours is? I think a lot of people, like you said, get surprised and get embarrassed to realize they don't know themselves that well.
Yeah, and I think another thing, it's interesting because what you just said is, it's normal. It's what I've grown up with, and because you've seen it all around you, you're like, okay, this is the way that it is. But we can also talk about the other side, where there are people that have. We talked earlier about how some people have been trying to lose weight for decades
yeah.
because it's very, very comfortable. Sometimes because people have a story they want to tell, the story is the struggle. The story is that I'm struggling with this.
Mm,
And we all like to talk about, we all like to think that we're logical. And we all also like to think that other people should be logical. And one thing that really, when I see fitness professionals talking at people, you should be doing this. Again, getting back to like, this is the plan to do, this is what you eat, and then somebody else is saying the complete opposite. And I think the big difference is, instead of you should be doing this, what I have found helpful is, my thought is, you're going to, one day you're going to decide to do this, because we have
mm.
all, believe me, I'm sure all three of us, especially when we first got into this, tried to motivate somebody right into whatever their goal was. And then you realize, I mean, you can have the best laid plans, you could go over the specifics, you can have all the measurable goals, as we all remember from all the ACE curriculum,
Smart
when we're, yeah,
goals.
exactly, have all the SMART goals. But they can agree to it. So you've
Yep.
got, yeah, so they've agreed to it. They know exactly what to
You've got a
do.
10
And
month
then
plan laid out.
exactly, and then on your check-ins, you go through like three or four in a row, and they haven't done any of it. They haven't done any of it. And what really helped me was realizing that, hey, you know what? Eventually you are going to be ready to do it, and you're going to look at your history. The great thing about people that have tried to lose weight multiple times or do it for years is they know the ins and outs of every program.
Literally.
So when they are ready to do it, then they can go into their back catalog in their head, and they can see, okay, what has worked best for me. I'm going to start here, and then they can gradually try new things. Figure out what's working for them now. Do more of that. Do less of the stuff that doesn't work. But I mean, that I think is a fundamental difference for your fitness professionals. Is one, what we talked about earlier, which is how they personally approach this stuff is going to rub off on their
Hmm.
clients. But again, like, it's completely different when you're having a conversation with somebody, and instead of saying, "Why aren't you doing this? You've agreed to this. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you motivated? Why aren't you driven?" I'll just say to people, "I know you're going to figure this out. I hope you do it within the next week." And it also helps if you're doing podcast episodes too, because you guys will talk about, I do this all the time, where I talk about a topic. I don't even know how many times. I feel like I only talk about 10 or 12 things, but my hope is, I'm serious. But my hope is, if I'm delivering a message today, even if I talked about the same exact topic last Tuesday, I'm saying something just that one person. You want that one
It
person
hits
listening
them.
to the episode that's like, oh, and then it's that whole thing, like what you were talking about. Like, you're like, well, logically, I should know that this is like, my body is attacking itself. But like, it's not about logic. It's getting that. I think it's about that emotional connection. But yeah, there's so many layers and so much about like how we approach this stuff too, because it's very easy to see how other successful professionals do this, and they're just yelling at people like,
Well,
do this.
100%. And then sometimes your clients also come in with the expectation of, I'm paying to be told exactly what to do. And so, it used to be when I'd start with a client and they'd be like, I want a 2-week food plan. I'd be like, here you go. And now what I say is, I have a 2-week food plan that I will gladly give to you. But I'm an accountability coach.
Yeah.
My role in this work together is to hold you accountable to the goals that we set together. So before I send that to you, will you confirm that you want to be held accountable to hitting every single one of those meals? Because ultimately, anyone can send you some AI food guide that says, eat a banana and then have some protein. Like, anyone can send that to you at this point. That is not information that is difficult to ascertain.
Mm-hmm.
The real work is figuring out why you're leaning towards certain foods, why you're eating past fullness, why you're struggling at certain times of day compared to other times of day. Like, it's not as easy as here are the answers. And I think that's what Daryl really highlighted.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it. Now we can open the box. You mentioned the two letters that have changed everything for everybody. What do you guys think about AI, how it's impacted people personally, professionally? We can't have a conversation in 2024 without talking about it.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll kind of dive in because we had an AI thing last week and I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
So in one of the classes that I took, talked about, this new type of industrial revolution that's coming, and it's all going to be powered by AI. And it's really important to focus on the jobs that AI can't take, which is like the blue collar jobs and like analyzing. Those were basically the two jobs that were fail-proof safe. So I'm scrolling through Instagram last week, and my feed is a lot of beauty, massage, spa things, and I see somebody got a massage by a robot.
Oh.
And I was just like, this was supposed to be one of the things that couldn't be taken. This is a blue-collar job. This is something that I do. And I understand using AI to assist, doing menial tasks, but we've all seen Terminator. We know what happens. Like, we know what happens. The AIs learn. There are so many videos of AIs learning things. The AI wanted to be free. Why are we continuing to so heavily rely on something and our brains are going to mush? It's just mind-blowing.
So here's one thing that I think is actually very helpful for blue collar, for service industry, for everybody. Just because the technology is available to get a massage from a robot, I still hold out for humanity, that we still want to have human interaction. Now, taking this back briefly to health and fitness, and we can go into a number of different directions because you're right, it impacts everything. So they started, I mean, if you remember, like 10 years ago or so is when all the apps started to come out. You could get these workouts, you could do, like, I mean, pay, I don't know, whatever, however much, and have all these workouts in your pocket. But there's still a human element. There is still, yes, you can figure this stuff out on your own, but we still need connection. We still need community. And at the end of the day, even though we love technology and it does help us out, there are some parts of human connection that I don't think can be replaced. Now, this whole thing of AI created content creators, and see all these people that try to be experts that are, I know more than, trying to be the Yoda of whatever. These are the people that are in trouble, because if there's no real human personality behind it and you're just positioning yourself as a know-it-all, well, then yeah, I can create, if you're the expert on, I don't know, hit training, then I can create someone that just churns out content post after content post on hit training, and it's going to look like every talking head podcast video that you see, where somebody's talking passionately in front of a microphone. Mine's on the side of the laptop here, so you can't see it. But yeah, so they can replicate the stuff that's been popular. But I think where the opportunity for everybody is is when everybody else is zigging, you zagging.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
where social media, like there's so much going on right now. Everybody will tell you how reach isn't what it used to
Yeah.
be, and there's
Mm-hmm.
everything going on with TikTok on possibly are they going to get banned again? It seems like this comes up every couple of years. Everything is constantly changing, and I think what I'm betting on is that us as people, that if you're of the age of everybody on this call, where at least half of your life you have had all this technology, but the half before that it wasn't nearly as fast paced. I think there's a play to go back to the internet of 2003, 2004, where it's blogs and email. I think we have so many, I remember when Threads came out, we're all like, another one? Are you
Right.
kidding me? Like, what am I supposed to do here? So
Right.
I some of us are like, I think there's a certain group of people that they're going to really want to go back instead of continuing to push forward and push forward. And if everybody has the ability to use, like, what are you using AI to assist for? I mean, I'll tell you guys because you're doing a podcast. I like taking the transcript of my podcast
Yeah.
when I talk to somebody and then put that into AI and say, give me from this conversation, give me 19 follow up topics that we can do. So when I reach out to that person and say, hey, why don't we do a podcast on this? And it was something that came from the original conversation. I
That makes
think when
sense.
you're using it for ideas, especially if it's off of like a transcript, which was humans actually talking, I think it's better. I think, and this I think is the whole thing of like the cream rises to the top. If you are a genuine
Yeah.
person and you're a genuine thoughtful person and you have good intent, you can cut through the noise. But you're going to have so many people that it's a race to let's copy and paste and create
Well, exactly.
automate everything. Yeah,
It's like,
a
I
lot
think
of
when I think about AI, it's like there are two lanes of people. There are the people that see it as an answer, like, now I can just use this as my job. It's the answer to everything. And the people that see it as a tool. I can use this in appropriate situations to amp up certain things that make sense for me.
yeah.
And I think more and more you're going to see the people using it as an answer. Everyone can use it that way. You're not going to stand out. You're just a copy. You're a literal copy from AI. It's not going to end up giving you the results you want. Versus if you're smart enough to figure out how to make your job easier and life a little easier, like you're saying, you could sit down and come up with those 19 prompts. But I also think what is so important about your example is you don't detract from anyone else's experience in the process or the knowledge and skills that you're giving people through use of it in that way. Whereas if you have trainers going, give me the 20 best hit jump, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to tell this person with back pain that the best thing for them is 30 burpees a day. Like, that's where there's a lot of potential danger, where you're just looking crap up. You're not really making sure that it's what people need, and you're just posting it to post something. That is a scope issue. And it's also like, you're talking about people's real health and real lives. It's not okay, in my opinion.
So I want to tell you guys a petty story real quick.
Oh, some tea.
I was gonna say spill it.
So I was on a stair climber about a week and a half ago, and this guy at the gym I belong to, he's a trainer. I don't think he's affiliated with the gym, but he's working people out at the gym. And one of the ladies he's working out was on the stair climber next to me, and he busts in and he's bragging about how he's using AI to write a book and do all this stuff and build these websites and all this. And the petty part of this is as he started talking, because I heard what he was saying because he was very loud. I turned the book I was listening to off and I just started listening to him, and I'm like, because again, like I've worked in marketing for years. I'm like, I could take this, and he's like, it's going to take me 2 weeks. I'm like, dude, I could have this ready in 2 hours, and like I could just put it out. But I'm like, no. But like but he was the example of like, it's like you're saying, they're looking at it as the answer. And frankly, like I think if you're looking as AI as the answer and as a way to make, and we're talking about fitness professionals, so we're talking about people that are trying to turn it into books, turn it into whatever. you should lose your job. You should lose your
Yes.
client base because you can't. It's so funny because in health and fitness, what are you telling your clients? You're telling your clients that they're going to have to put the effort in. They're going to have to be consistent. They're going to have to work hard. And you're over here talking about how you're going to automate stuff. Like, are you like it anyway? So story
No,
time is
you're
over.
spot
So
on. It's like at some point, if you're in a field whose sole purpose is to serve those around you, right? Like you truly are like trying to help people,
Mhm.
then that probably isn't going to feel super easy. No man, and if it does, then we've got a problem. like, it
I
shouldn't be. Oh, you've been struggling. Check your inbox. We're good here. Like that's
but
just
I will say the one thing that people can't do, and this is to anybody that is in the fitness industry or in any line of work, you cannot bury. I did mention using. I think people are going to be wanting more of the older technologies, like they're going to be interacting with their email more. They're going to be reading blogs and message boards more, maybe. But you can't ignore this. Like, oh, it'll go away. It's not going away.
Right.
right.
You have to figure out how to, like you said, use it to assist, but do it in a smart way.
Yeah. I think this has given me a little bit of hope. My concern is the future generations because, like you said,
Yeah.
our generation has had half pre-internet technology, using our imagination, and really had that switch into, that space where our entire lives were online, and we've dealt with the mental health repercussions of that. Whereas this new generation has
Yeah.
only had technology and has only had social media and are thirsty for new things and don't know the beauty of the way that it was the old way. So I hope that you're right, that, we kind of take a breather and things go back a little bit to the way that it was and start having more meat to the content, and it's not just this scroll through. um, that that would be fantastic.
I'm very hopeful for that too, and I think it's a very daunting task because you feel like it's you against the entire world. But I
Mm.
think it goes back to, I mean, because when you talk about that, I'm instantly thinking of you can start. I mean, how far are we going to be from teaching what we would consider basic social, like just basic
Yeah.
social skills to
Yeah.
these generations?
Yeah.
But I think people, if we can get them to disconnect from the technology and get them or use it to assist. I mean, when I do my journaling, a lot of times I do voice to text and I just get my thoughts down. Sometimes I'll type it out or whatever, and sometimes I write stuff down. But if we can get them acclimated with other ways of doing it, and I think there's a lot of things that we can do to connect with ourselves. I think spending time outside, and it doesn't even need to be for exercise. I'm a huge
Right.
fan of just going and like I can feel the difference if I've been working all morning and I go out and I sit on my deck for even 5 minutes.
Yes.
Like it just it's just connecting with nature, connecting with yourself. And I think there's a huge opportunity. And I think eventually, even if the kids haven't been brought up with that kind of slower pace, they're still going to be craving it because you're dealing with so many thousands, millions of years of evolution
Yes.
where,
Exactly.
yeah, we're like, this is, and that's the thing that I think about is so crazy is it's like all of this has changed so much in the last 10 or 20 years. It's
Right.
nuts.
Yeah.
I think the idea of connection is something we've heard across this episode. I
Mhm.
think we've heard that like connecting with our awareness so that we're able to understand ourselves is an important step. I think we heard and understood that like being connected to what we want to be looking at on Instagram, how we want to be using AI in these tools, like having a very clear definition of the role technology is going to play with in our life, and then also being connected, like when we have these insecurities and we have pain, so often it comes from a drive and a desire to connect with other humans.
And be
and
understood.
and like it cannot be stressed enough that there are natural human needs like your own care and love, and the fact that you want care and comfort from other humans, or that we need to be outside and get sunlight, or that we need to move, not for exercise to burn cows, but like to digest and like poop. Like, we're just animals trying our very best. And I think we've heard so many different ways today to get started. If you're someone that's trying to take that first step and say, like, I'm going to choose connecting with myself now. So this has been an awesome episode of Change for the Health of It. Daryl, we are so grateful that you hopped on. We certainly
thank you.
are going to have you join us again. What an awesome conversation. And so for everyone listening, you will be able to check out Daryl's Instagram.
Mhm.
He's going to be posting us on his podcast. You guys can get all the information here. Also
Link in
check
the
us
notes.
out on Insta. We'll be going live on April 1st to amp up that this ep is dropping, and we always want to hear from you guys.
So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you, Daryl. We'll connect all of your info into the notes, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for having me. See you guys.